Okay, we're live. We're back. We're ThinkTech. It's a Wednesday afternoon, our flagship show, Hawaii, the state of energy, the state of clean energy. I knew you'd say that. That's Ray Starling, my co-host, forever helping me out.
Of course.
And our special guest today, the man who is going to show us miracles, if you will, is Tim Houghton, and he does environmental services at H-Power. That's in all caps, okay? And we're calling this show The Miracle of H-Power. And if you don't know what H-Power is, you're going to find out what that is very soon. And if you don't know what the miracle of H-Power is, you're going to find out that very soon, too. This is going to be a miraculous discussion. I'm so looking forward. But before we get to the substance of our discussion, we have a special guest in the shadows there of our studio here in Pioneer Plaza, in the core of downtown Honolulu. We have Carolyn Carl from Hawaii Energy, and Rob DeVerterra is not here with us. And so a shout out for Rob, even though he's not here. We're having separation anxiety that he's not here, but he's here with us in spirit, and Carolyn is here with us in the flesh.
Absolutely.
Okay. Carolyn, you got some news about energy myths we need to know.
I do. Well, I'm not sure if you knew, but October is Energy Awareness Month. So at Hawaii Energy, we're here to help residents and businesses save electricity, and we thought what better time to debunk some common energy myths than during Energy Awareness Month. So one of the first common myths is that when you turn off your TV or your DVD player, it's no longer using electricity. But little did you know, in many cases, it still is. We call these phantom loads. Now, we make some recommendations to deal with phantom loads. One is using an advanced power strip, so to plug your TV and DVD player into a load sensing power strip that can actually cut off the power to those devices when you turn them off. We also have another common myth is that your computer screensavers save energy, but they do not. So one thing to be aware of, if you're going to be away from your computer for at least 15 minutes, put it into sleep or hibernate mode. But the best case scenario is always to turn it off when you're not using it to save energy. And then finally, another common myth that we face a lot that we want people to be aware of is that there is only one type or shape of compact fluorescent lights. So when you're out looking for energy efficient lamps like CFLs, you definitely want to be aware that you want to fit the right lamp to the right fixture. So you can look, there's quite a few different types. There's some that are better for damp locations, some that are better for ceiling fans, and all this is available. You can visit our website at hawaiienergy.com or give us a call, 537-5577, and we can provide you with some more energy saving tips. Oh,
wow, that was neat. That was neat.
Good.
Okay, you want to ask questions now? I mean, maybe you want to have, a 3 or 4 point quiz. Address your questions to Tim Houghton.
Right, why not?
Okay, Tim, how about you doing some cross-examination on Carolyn Carl?
The question is, which CFL bulb is it I use in my ceiling fan?
Is that a question for me or for you?
You have to make a house call to determine the answer.
I can tell you which ones that you should use. So the standard spiral CFL is really the best CFL to use in a lamp that goes straight up and down. When you have a downward, lamps in your ceiling fan, a lot of times you want to use the more A-frame bulbs, or when you look on the boxes themselves, they actually show where their ideal locations are. So the standard spiral, although it will work, will have a reduced lifetime in that upside down ceiling fan fixture.
You have a question? Because if you don't, Ray, I do.
No, go right ahead.
You can make your question or comment right after mine.
No, I know all of this.
It's true. Okay, Carolyn. We have heard from you guys on a number of occasions about all these appliances at home that have little red lights that keep on blinking all night long. Okay? And it's like, it's like every appliance in the house has this kind of little red light. And, you're talking about it's a myth, that we don't think about it. And then also there's guys that are trying to fix that. I mean, that, get in there and they put some kind of device between the appliance and the wall, and you control that and actually turn it off. And so that way there's no red light burning in the middle of the night,
Right.
But I mean, if you count all the red lights in a given residence these days, it's going to be dozens of these things all over the house, you know.
Absolutely.
And it strikes me here in the U.S. of A. that it's kind of funny that we have this national policy about saving energy and being energy efficient. And well, in the world, it's not just the USA. At the same moment, we continue to manufacture these devices that all have the red lights. Why do we do that? Why doesn't Congress legislate? Why doesn't the Department of Energy regulate? Can we stop this? And so it's very kludgy what happens. Just take out the red light. What do you say?
Well, I mean, I think that I completely agree with where you're coming from with where we're adding more kind of bells and whistles in some cases that may not be necessary. But for a lot of the new technologies, they have built-in amenities like clocks, you know, the little red light on the clock, the coffee maker or the stove, things like that, that for many people, they really enjoy to have that feature. And so I think they give it gives us a lot more options for what people want to have. And by having those things like conserve switch and power switch, you as a consumer can choose to conserve in those cases. But for many folks, they like to be able to know what time it is in every room in the house, or they like to be able to know that this has been plugged in and ready to go. And if you think about it, some of these features also allow you to program things so that the coffee machine goes on when you wake up. And so those are all options that are provided as technology increases. So the best thing about many of those is that a lot of them are using LED lights, which are very efficient, and so it's not using a tremendous amount of energy, but it is something to be aware of as a consumer, what that adds.
Ray, that was an excellent answer.
It was.
Carolyn,
It was,
I'm blown away by that. It's an excellent answer. Ray, you want to add anything to
Well,
that?
the lights themselves don't use a whole lot of power, the LED lights, but on many of the devices where the red light is on, it means that the system is on and waiting for someone to just hit the button to light it up. And that's the phantom loads that we keep talking about. And Carolyn has spoken to that today. If you have a conserve switch where you can actually turn it off, you turn off the basic power going to the thing with the red light, and the red light goes off, and so does the thing, whatever it is.
I can't help but thinking, and I have to admit that I was thinking this while you were speaking, Carolyn, of my home when I was a kid. We had these little West clocks, alarm clocks, all over the place. And you would take your hand, this hand, and you would wind that sucker up, and you would coil the spring in there. And it would actually tell you the time. It would tell you the time. Furthermore, that if you said you wanted to wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning for coffee or whatever, there were these two bells on the top. They would ring. And this was not only, limited nanotechnology, this was zero technology, just personal effort turning the spring. But it wasn't hard to turn the spring. And maybe in the future we should go back to that. What do you think? Never mind. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you for a very interesting discussion.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Say thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
I knew he'd say that. Okay, let's get serious now. Tim Houghton is a serious guy involved in a miracle almost every day. And we're going to find out about H-Power. And the first thing we're going to ask him is, what is it?
H-Power is a waste-to-energy plant. And as a waste-to-energy plant, it takes our what we call municipal solid waste, burns it, heats water, generates it, runs a steam turbine, and feeds that electricity into the HECO power grid. So it is really part of our power generation system here on the island of Oahu.
Are we burning all the power, all the trash, or just some of the trash? Because I recall there was an issue about landfill and barges to the mainland. We're not burning it all, are we?
We're not burning all the trash. At this point, the MSW, and I'm going to use the short term, but municipal solid waste, the MSW is our primary place to have that put is H-Power. And H-Power, until about a year and a half ago, could handle 600,000 tons a year. And we were running actually a little more than 600,000 tons a year. So we were maxed out. The remaining materials went to the landfill, as well as those things that we, of course, try to drive to the recycling programs, whether that be plastic recycling, glass recycling, green waste recycling. So we're out there trying to keep things out of the waste stream that has to go to a landfill. You know, recently we expanded the plant, and so it is now can handle.
A couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago, and it can handle 900,000 tons a day. So it was really a 50% expansion. Today, there are just a few things that we can't take yet to H-Power, but we will be doing that. One of them is sewage sludge, which still does go to the landfill. We will be able to take that to H-Power, burn that, to use that to generate electricity as well, come January to February of next year.
Oh, that's soon.
That's soon. And we will, and basically, once we do that, it also allows us to take the remaining bulky items, you know, that stuff we love to see on the street corners that people put out there too often, get picked up. We have to mix bulky items with sludge in the landfill to make it compact right. So once we can take the sludge out, it also means we can take the bulky out, because we can then burn the bulky at H-Power.
So at 900,000 tons is what you burn. What do we generate here in Oahu?
The total generation on MSW is about 1.2 million
of tons of garbage.
Tons of garbage.
So we're doing most of it.
We're doing most of it now. Once we finish with the sludge and such, and we get maximum, we will be at roughly 10% of the waste goes, and that's really in the form of ash that goes now to the landfill. So we've reduced what goes to the landfill by 90% through the use of H-Power.
That's fabulous.
In the meantime, we're generating electricity.
That's fabulous.
And the good thing about H-Power is that it is firm power without burning the traditional fossil fuels.
Right.
Firm
So
dispatchable power.
It's thought of as a renewable power source, and that's very important because the grid is becoming very full of renewable energy that's not firm power, and that's one of the problems that we've got now. And H-Power, you know, we wish we had more like it throughout the islands, and I think it's the only municipal waste burning
It is here.
in the islands.
In the islands, that's correct.
There's no other county, no other
No other
island
county doing it at this point in
Why
time.
not, actually, Tim?
It's largely a case of volume versus the investment that has to be made in the facility. So you don't have quite enough waste volume on the outer islands.
What investment have we made?
We have invested a total of about $450 to $500 million in that facility. The recent expansion was about $320 million worth. So it's obviously, we want to make good use of it, get our value out of that investment for the community here.
What is the power?
What's the output? Yeah.
The current output of the plant really was most recently about 7% of the feed to the Oahu grid, about 40,000 homes, and that really was at the 600,000 ton level. So it's going up at this point. Right now we're receiving about 680,000 tons of waste, partly because recycling is working better, partly because things renew, the reduction in waste has occurred. That's a good thing, but it also is a little difficult for us. But we're looking at adding, I said, the sludge, some other things that will bring us up to probably over 800,000 tons. Then we're going to be, you know, in that 60 to close to 60,000 homes where the power, you know.
Now we're going to take a short break, Tim, but when we come back, I'd like us to consider the question of whether it is every citizen's duty to provide more trash so we can generate more megawatts. Okay, I'll leave you with that question.
I like it.
We're going to take a short break. That's Tim Houghton, Environmental Services at H-Power, here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy, and we're talking today with him and Ray Starling, of course, my co-host, about the miracle of H-Power. We'll be right back with more of the miracle.
Aloha, this is Martin Despang, co-host of the Urban Transcendence Show by Alejandra Yamashita and Martin Despang. And me being an architect and an educator in architecture, I'm really interested in that we make our urban environment here in downtown Honolulu as exciting, invigorating, and challenging, beautiful as our wonderful paradise natural environment. We're going to bring in guests from a diversity of areas that help us to learn how we can achieve that goal that shouldn't be that hard to reach. So we look very much forward to see you then. Thank you.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Tim Houghton, the Environmental Services of H-Power, and Ray Starling, my co-host today, and Sharon Moriwaki is back there in the shadows where Carol and Carl used to be. Hi, Sharon. Talking about clean energy, Hawaii, the state of clean energy. And we're talking today about the miracle of H-Power right out there at Kapolei. So what about it? Do I have a duty? Would it benefit you or the state or the people of the state if I generated more trash?
It would certainly benefit us from a if I'm just purely economics, I'd say give me more trash. Is it the right thing to do? Can we find ways to, reduce packaging, to reduce the need for bags and other things? Absolutely, and we should do that. We shouldn't try to feed H-Power just as the reduce your waste, that's the right thing, reuse materials, recycle where it's appropriate. We don't think in all cases it might not be totally appropriate, but don't create waste just to feed the furnace.
It strikes me that if everybody went out on a given Sunday and cleaned out their garage, storage rooms,
right.
And gave that on the curb on Monday, you'd have a lot of power on Monday.
You wouldn't generate a lot of power on Monday.
So, Tim, how did you get into this business? This is a city job.
Right.
And I'm not sure what it is, environmental services for H-Power. You can tell us what that is.
Let me tell you, we have, environmental services is a city department. We're responsible for the solid waste program of the city, which includes your home refuse collection, as well as H-Power, as well as the landfill. We're also responsible for the wastewater system of the city and county. So for 70% of the population, we provide your wastewater service, all from collecting from your house all the way to the treatment and disposal process. How did I get into this? That was a good question. And I
start at the beginning.
Start at the beginning.
They may want to follow. They may want your job.
What actually happened? I started with the city about 23 years ago, and I came out of the military, so I a certain level of experience, finance, human resources, and I ended up creating a wastewater management department. Back in,
you were there at the beginning.
In 1993, they created the wastewater management department. I ended up coming out of an earlier rail program, into the wastewater management department.
Maybe that's where rail is going to go.
Yes, right.
Never mind. I couldn't.
No, that's all right. Maybe we can run it to the trash collection. No. But and
you heard it here on ThinkTech.
And then, basically, though, from there. In 1998, the city reorganized, created the Environmental Services Department, which moved the solid waste program with the wastewater program, because we do have the connectivity at the end with the waste that's generated from both, and how do you manage those. I have been really more on the finance side and such, although I've been now the deputy director for the last year and a half, and also served as the deputy director about 10 years ago for about a year and a half. So.
How much science do you deal with?
I deal with quite a bit of science. I don't pretend to be the engineer, because I'm not. But I do deal with it, because you can't talk to the people without getting a pretty darn good understanding of that process over time.
Okay. Well, that sort of takes me to a question I know that Ray Starling is burning to ask you, and that is, what is the technology? What makes H-Power work? It's not just a matter of lighting up the trash. It's much more than that. What is the technology involved?
Well, H-Power, the original H-Power, which was built in the late 1980s and opened in 1990, was what we called a refuse-derived fuel. Okay, meaning you took your normal refuse and you had to run it through a shredder so it got down to a certain size so it could go into a furnace. And then again, from the furnace is heating creating steam, which is turning a turbine generator, which is then generating the electricity. The refuse-derived fuel works really well, except it's very limiting because you can only take things that can be shredded. You couldn't take mattresses. You couldn't take some kinds of furniture and various things like that because they just don't, carpet won't shred. Will it burn? Yes, but it won't shred. So when we upgraded and expanded the facility, we basically went to a mass burn facility. So that instead of the refuse-derived fuel, you take the whole furnace, you take you take the whole piece of carpet, you take the whole piece of, it could be a sofa, and you can put that directly into the furnace. So now you can really take anything. So I can take, if I wanted to, I don't, but I can take green waste. I can take, again, I take the carpets, I take the mattresses. So all those things that used to have to go to the landfill don't have to go to the landfill at this point because of the mass burn facility. The other piece with the technology, now we've got two separate trains and two separate boilers and two generators, is that we don't have to, if we have to take one down for maintenance, which you have to do periodically, you don't have to take the whole facility down. Because that's what used to happen. You would take the facility down for 2 weeks, and everything then went to the landfill. So again, for the redundancy here and the ability to manage the system allows us to keep that large component of our waste going through H-Power and not going into a situation in a landfill where it has no use.
So where did the big money go? $400 million. Where did it go? Into the burning facility, the generating facility, all of the above?
Oh,
anyway?
it's really all of the above.
So what is the more difficult technology that you have to deal with?
I think the more difficult technology is probably the steam boiler piece that you have to have in both cases. So you're doing a steam boiler, creating that, running a turbine generator, so they have to run at a certain rate and such.
Right. So it's the operating machinery.
Right. It's the operating machinery.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. And where do you do the sorting? Where do you say this one goes to the landfill and this one goes to H-Power?
What happens today is that we basically direct all the trucks, whether it's our trucks doing collection or it's private haulers doing residential collection, and I'm not talking about construction debris, but everything else, we direct them first to H-Power. So as long as H-Power is open, you take it to H-Power. In H-Power, one of the things that does happen, you're able to, got magnets that pull out the metals.
Oh, cool.
So that you don't burn the metals. You can pull out, to sort out other things by size, which is what if you're running the RDF side, you have to do. But that's all done at H-Power. It's all done mechanically. There's not people sorting it. The truck just goes up and dumps.
Well, if we did that, we'd have to pay them a lot of money.
And there'd be a lot of them.
It's true. It's like, what did I hear today about, when you have oil spills at sea?
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to get anybody to actually go out and clean it up.
Yes.
It's not nice
It's
work.
not fun work.
And it's caustic chemicals involved, and nobody wants to do it. The unions don't want to do it. The government doesn't want to do it. Nobody wants to do it. It's always a big search to find out who's going to do it. Anyway, so it's the same thing. It's not particularly pleasant. Although I want to add my story that I told you beforehand about I went out to take a movie of the Kapolei peaking plant right after it opened, and it was right across the fence from H-Power. And my guide, he didn't know that I didn't know what was over there. And I'm saying, gee, that smells so good. It smells like food. What is around you? You have a restaurant around here? There's a fine French restaurant in the neighborhood. What is that? Well, it was H-Power. It had this organic smell.
Right.
It wasn't bad at all.
It is, and all your home food waste goes to H-Power.
Yeah,
there you go.
I figured that out. Now I remember it wasn't too long ago when we were made aware. We the public were made aware of technology that was trying to get into Hawaii that would burn it under very hot flame and burn it into ash. This was an alternative technology, right? What do you call it?
Well, the one that was talked about quite a bit was plasma arc.
That's the one.
Right, and plasma arc at the time, and this would have been, again, that 10 years ago time frame, was being touted as, it's great, it takes everything down, it comes up in a little big, really solid piece of glass at the end of the process. very small amounts even compared to the ash, but it's tremendously energy intensive to get it running and keep it running. And at the time we looked at that, there were really not any active facilities. There was, because I did have a chance to go visit the facilities, a couple of them on the mainland. The one that was really only running was a 10-ton-a-day facility running at the Hanford nuclear reactor, a nuclear plant up in Washington, just for nuclear waste.
It wasn't related to the reactor, though.
No, but it was to be used for destroying nuclear waste.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it had a very specific use and it was very high cost, because of that.
Yes.
But the plasma arc opportunity hasn't really worked or been put into operation in a large scale anywhere.
Just doesn't pencil out.
Doesn't pencil out.
And especially if you want to generate clean energy with it, but you have to use so much energy to make it happen. It's kind of a loop.
That's right. It's kind of a loop. It really doesn't get you the back end of what I would call the renewable piece of what you're getting out of H-Power.
Well, Tim, you've been working with this for as long as it's existed, really, and I wonder if you can tell us whether, H-Power is working, whether it's working, in terms of getting the job done about burning, whether it's working in terms of, penciling out by the investment and the return, so to speak. We haven't worked those numbers, but I'm sure you have. So can we say that H-Power is, at this point in time, a success for the city?
Oh, absolutely. if we had been putting that 600,000 to 700,000 tons a year into a landfill, because that's what would have been doing for the last 20 some odd years.
Yeah.
The landfill that we've got, which now has a whole lot, has another 30 years of life, because we're not putting waste into it, we'd be into a second and a third landfill perhaps. It's that positive a thing that, so you're reducing what you need as a landfill, you're reusing the energy that exists in the materials, you're creating power, helps us not have to import oil or coal or other fuels to provide our day-to-day energy needs.
So
I would say it's absolutely a success.
But the primary purpose is to get rid of the waste, so you don't put it in the landfill.
Correct.
You happen to get power as a result, which helps you
It's a byproduct.
Right.
Well, it helps us pay it absolutely helps us pay the bill, because obviously we sell that power to HECO. But we are really a waste disposal facility, but with that big byproduct and positive benefit for the community of getting that and turning it into electricity, that really, H-Power pays for itself between combination of tipping fees and electrical energy revenue. So it is definitely a success that way.
Okay, let me ask you one question before we go to the break. And I don't think people know this, and I'm not sure of it, but I recall that landfills have their own problems, that landfills are not good for the environment at all, that landfills undermine the environment, something awful, and you don't want them if you don't have to have them. Am I right about that?
Well, basically, landfills are kind of somewhat of a necessity, but if you don't do them right, and the regulations have gotten stronger and stronger, and it's very appropriate, if you just dig a hole in the ground and you put stuff in there, it's going to leach into the soil, it's going to leach into groundwater. So you've got to line them, and then you've got a forever maintenance issue. They don't really go away. I mean, you can close them, and we closed some over on the windward side, 25, 30 years ago, but we still have to maintain them. We still have to make sure that they generate methane gas and the other things. So you have to go through that process. They're a continuing responsibility to make sure it costs money. You have to protect the environment. So if you can avoid the landfill as a daily use landfill kind of process and only use it for emergencies, you're much, much better off.
And I remember too, if you do it wrong, on a hillside, for example, at a certain angle, right? Am I right about this? The whole thing slides down.
It could. Yeah,
and if the bottom of that mountain, that hill, you're looking at a landfill coming down on you. This is not the best thing that ever happened.
Right. It could. I mean, that's an important part of the construction. So if you're doing it a lot of places will try and do it on a very flat location and build up, you know, and stack, whereas we are using a valley, but that does mean that you have to do all the right things to make sure that everything stays put.
Okay, well, it's all part of the miracle of H-Power with Tim Houghton, Environmental Services at the City and County here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. We'll be right back after this short break. We're going to ask Tim Sharon Moriwaki's favorite question, which is, what are the problems? We'll be right back. We're going to find out.
Aloha, my name is Kenneth Lawson. I'm your host here at Life in the Law. I'm really interested in law as I practiced it for 18 years before coming to Hawaii. I practiced criminal law and civil rights law on the mainland. Now I teach law at the University of Hawaii Law School, William S. Richardson School of Law, and I bring in guests who are very current on legal issues that affect your life here in Hawaii. Come and join me every Wednesday at 1 p.m. as we explore how the law affects you, how the law is changing, and why it's important that you should care about what's going on in your community. See you then.
Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidell, enjoying myself in our flagship show here on every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. Today we're talking about the miracle of H-Power with Tim Houghton, who is in the Environmental Services Department of the city, and they run H-Power. H-Power, I presume, stands for Honolulu Power.
I think that's right.
Wild guess.
Wild guess.
So, you know, we always like to ask, especially around this time in the show, you know, what your challenges are, Tim. You know, what do you lie awake at night worrying about? What could go wrong? How do you prevent that?
You know, really our biggest challenge, the facility itself is fine, and the facility will continue to run. We've got a good operating company there. So not problem there. Our biggest problem is we designed and built the expansion, you know, based on projected waste levels from 10 to 12 years ago, and whether it was through the economic problems of a few years ago, and then people getting conscious in terms of, you know, how do I change packaging? How do I stop using various things? Our waste hasn't grown at the level that we anticipated. So we do have some contractual issues in that we anticipated a certain amount of waste going to H-Power, so we have a guarantee with the operator, and we can't quite meet that guaranteed tonnage at the moment.
Qu'est-ce que c'est que ça? You learned this on ThinkTech. It's amazing what we learn here from guys like Tim Houghton. You know, how come we don't have as much trash as we thought we were going to have? Is it that everybody's being good, or is everybody putting everything in the storage locker? I mean, what is going on here, Tim?
I think everybody's being good. You know, we've done a lot over that same period of time trying to deal with what we thought was a total package, and so everybody may remember we rolled out green waste and mixed recyclables curbside collection. Well, that's been nice and successful. Unfortunately, that means that there's less stuff going to H-Power. Because if we take that out of the waste stream, take the green waste, compost it, get it reused, we take your glass, your plastics, your paper, in your blue can, those go and go to recycler and they get reused. Well, that's waste that if you were just the old days of throwing the plastic bag or the bin on the curb, that all went to H-Power or the landfill. So it's good that it's not in the waste stream in that sense, but we're so successful because people got very interested that it's given us that different problem of not quite enough waste. It's there total, but we've diverted it other directions.
So knowing that, finding this awesome truth out, what's your projection now?
Well, our projection really is that within another 3 to 4 years we'll get there, because just as you expand population, you expand the number of people, the level of waste will go up in total tonnage.
The level of waste will go up. Got it? Make notes.
And even if individuals generate smaller amounts per individual, the total amount as the population increases will go up. So we still have the absolute need for H-Power and the tonnage capability there, but we're certainly going to try and maximize what we can do with it by continuing to divert other things, like I said, the sewage sludge, we're actually taking tires there now as well. Tires used to go to a recycler. We're taking tires there, which, all those things that we can move to H-Power instead of going somewhere else that perhaps we pay somebody to take them, which we're trying to do that. But that's our biggest challenge, and it kind of runs against that scheme that people think of reuse, recycle, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Well, the things are being reduced. We try to recycle stuff, and then we try to reuse them. But we don't kind of think of the fact that here on Oahu, which is a very small place, we don't do things like take plastic and remanufacture it here.
We could.
Ship
I
it
had the
somewhere.
same thought while you were talking.
Yeah.
We could pull the plastic out. We could have small manufacturing with plastic.
And
Remember that line from The Graduate? Plastics, young man, plastics. You got to remember all the way back for that one.
I do though. That's
I remember that movie.
Just a thought.
Just a thought.
Well, okay, but
Let me ask, what about you mentioned greenways.
right.
Could we be more aggressive with collecting green waste? Would that work? Is that a way? Because you see, I think you're becoming, H-Power started out as just a way to not put stuff in the landfill,
Right.
and then you found out you could actually make electricity with it. But I'm telling you, in the future, in the near future, in fact, right now, the fact that you are a renewable power producer is a big deal when we're thinking about expanding more in with the renewable energy that is intermittent.
Right.
Because you can, without using traditional fossil fuel, you can be that firm power that we need in order to make the grid work with the windmills that are coming and going with the wind, and the PV, which is coming and going with the
Right.
sun. So I see your plant becoming more valuable to the community in the future. But if it's not being fully utilized because we don't have enough
Right.
fuel, then we need to start looking for more fuel. And what I'm thinking is the green waste, or even, if we ended up having to purchase, renewable wood chips or something like that from, say, the Big Island, which they plan to
Right.
burn some wood chips on the Big Island and a power plant there. But if we had to do that, I think there would be enough benefit in that we could pay some additional costs for the fuel.
Right.
And because it's still making the whole system work better. Have you looked into the green waste or purchasing fuel if you need to?
We have in a number of ways the green waste. One of the challenges is this idea of well, no, and it's not something. The ability to burn it is not a problem.
No.
Okay, it's more the state laws and some of the rules that focus you on the recycling program. So if the priorities, if you look at what you're supposed to do and reduce, reuse, recycle, down below that is waste to energy. So the priority is on this. Go turn that into compost and reuse it that way.
Right.
Versus same thing with recycling your plastic. Plastics would be great fuel in H-Power, but the priority in the scheme is recycle them, which in our case means ship them off the island. Would it be nice if we had a local manufacturer? Yes, but we don't and probably wouldn't. Just not enough volume to do that. Would we like to be able to swap that around and begin to bring green waste into H-Power? Yes, we looked at doing that as an example with what you're getting, might have to do out of the coconut rhinoceros beetle, because you're creating a lot of green waste. We're ready to take that,
Right.
as an example of
Well,
looking at alternative fuels.
I think we ought to as a society, we ought to relook at, this hierarchy and start thinking about, you know, the value of being able to burn more instead of certainly the
Right.
stuff that we ship off island. Think of the cost to do that.
Exactly.
And if we could burn it here, because what we're doing is if we don't burn something in your plant, but rather ship it off, we're having to import more oil
Exactly.
to make up the difference.
And spend the fuel delivering it somewhere else.
Exactly.
That's right. So
I think this might be something that the policy forum ought to be looking at.
Well, that,
You're not on the radio, I mean, on the,
I think this is the aha that
it's
hi
the voice
Tim.
of Sharon Moriwaki.
That was really the unintended consequences of recycling and reusing when you didn't have any use for plastics here, and that's one of the biggest generators of
Right.
electricity. And so we were talking together, Tim and I, and we said, well, we've got to get Ray involved in this, is that in terms of recycling, it's going to cost us to export the plastics when we could actually use the plastics here in Tim's
Right.
H-Power facility. So I think you've hit on the aha of what do we need to do next to really use the plastics here rather than exporting it.
Absolutely.
Right.
I really believe that's a big deal.
That,
And
I
we
think
should
so
go-
too. I mean, I think we did all the right things, and we all the standard models that are used, that standard hierarchy that's used. But remembering that we're here on an island and not in California or Washington State or somewhere, there's a chunk of that process that is different because you now have to both import stuff and then you pay to export it again to get it reused. And if you could reuse it here, you'd be much, much better off in my view.
How do you get the plastic out?
Well, that's just a case of how we choose to have, actually we sort it today, and we have a recycler that sorts it, and plastics go one place, glass goes another. You could pull the plastics and feed them to H-Power. You could just tell the people, don't bother, just put them in your blue can, put them in your gray can. You know, and so that's the cleanest and quickest sort, you know,
Yeah.
and it saves money in the
Well,
process.
that's a great idea. Wish we could do that. We need manufacturing
so
here.
Tim, but Tim can help us do that, Tim, in terms of what might it take to actually do that so we can keep the money here at home.
Well, I think we do have to go look at what the current state law says, because there are state policies in the state law that talk about that hierarchy, about where we're obligated to do certain things and trying to reach a reduction
Right.
goal.
But I think that's worthy of a discussion in the legislature
Yes.
about is that still a good rule? Maybe not.
Mhm.
Maybe we need a different hierarchy, especially with the plastics, because it sounds like that's a pretty big piece of what could be burned here that's not being burned.
If we were just incinerating for the sake of incineration to reduce the volume of waste that goes to landfill, then that all makes sense.
Right.
But when you're in an area where we have to bring in all our energy to create electricity to take care of how we live, the fact that we can use what we've already brought in to generate electricity with the plastics or what we've
Sure.
grown in terms of the green waste, making that available as a fuel seems to make a lot of sense for sustainability locally versus, doing something else.
You mentioned earlier that the neighbor island, in fact, no place other than H-Power in Kapolei, one building essentially, is doing this in the state. But it strikes me it'd be better if we did it in every county. And the question is whether the technology has changed since the original H-Power facility was built, so to be more efficient with smaller scale operations that could be used on the neighbor islands.
I know that the Big Island has been looking at potentially a waste energy facility. Kauai looked at one. I think they have opted not to do one. They're also being, they kind of approach us and say, well, could we ship waste to you? Now that has its own problems and perception, but it's an example of an alternative feedstock.
Sure. That's worth looking at.
And we're looking at that, but people don't bring your waste to us.
Yeah, just send money.
Just send money. But again, those are the kinds of things. Yeah.
Well, sadly, we've reached the end of our throw here today, the end of the pile, so to say.
Okay, yes. Keep the piles low.
With Tim Houghton. Ray, you have a summary you want to make, sort of try to put this in perspective somehow?
I go back to the summary I usually have, and that is we need to have you back so we can continue this discussion. And I really, we ought to get Miss Milwaukee over here with us so she can be in the middle of this discussion. So, you know, I think there's great opportunity, especially if you've got unused capacity at a garbage burning plant on this island, and if there are other islands that have garbage that they need to get rid of, we need to rethink this because it could be a win-win-win all around.
Huh. Well, see how we discover things. We dig things right up here on Hawaii, the state of clean energy. The miracle of H-Power with Tim Houghton. Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Aloha.
Right.
Thank you, Ray.
Aloha.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Thanks.